It's terrible that after 50 years it is behind closed doors. And I've no intention that I've started to stop now. I'm determined to put an end to this. Terrible.
Camilla had expected another quiet palace inventory, another carefully managed examination of objects carrying decades of royal history. Instead, one sentence from the jewelers changed the atmosphere completely. Prince Philip's platinum ring, preserved after his death and sealed among his most personal effects, had not been reserved for the monarch, the Queen Consort, or even the future king. It had been left to Sophie, and before anyone could soften the meaning, Camilla stood up and walked out. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles felt the tension before anyone spoke again. The closed jewelry review had brought him, Sophie, Camilla, and two senior jewelers together to examine objects from Prince Philip's private estate, meaning possessions he personally owned outside formal crown property. These pieces mattered beyond platinum, diamonds, or age. They carried memories, private loyalties, and silent judgments. The king knew a ring worn through decades of family life could say more about trust than any public honor. Sophie remained still as the jeweler lifted a velvet case and checked its identifying marks against the sealed instructions. Then came the sentence nobody could misunderstand. Prince Philip's platinum ring had been left specifically to Princess Sophie. The jeweler explained that the sealed instruction, a private written direction kept closed until the review, named her alone. No change in rank, marriage, or royal status could redirect it. Philip had made the recipient unmistakable. Camilla stared at the case, and surprise hardened into something deeper. She asked whether there could be a mistake. Charles watched her carefully because he understood what she was really asking. This was not about authentication. It was about why his father had chosen Sophie for something so personal. The Queen Consort had spent years building her place inside the family, yet this ring seemed to carry an intimacy that position could not command. Sophie moved her hand toward the box, but that small gesture broke the calm. She looked overwhelmed because Philip's approval had never been casual. To her, the gift felt less like inheritance and more like a final acknowledgement. Camilla pushed back her chair. She told Charles she could not remain for the rest of the inventory, then left before the ring was placed in Sophie's hands. Charles did not follow her. He kept his eyes on the jeweler and asked the question that made the room feel colder. Did my father explain why? The answer would force everyone there to confront something far more painful than inheritance, because Philip's choice had been rooted in a relationship the palace had underestimated for years. Sophie never built her place inside the family through spectacle. That was precisely why Philip noticed her. While others attracted headlines, demanded explanations, or fought over position, she became someone he could trust without ceremony. Their relationship grew through private conversations, shared responsibilities, and moments almost invisible beyond palace walls. So when his platinum ring surfaced, with her name attached, the shock was not that Sophie had received something valuable. The shock was what Philip had chosen to say through it. Sophie had spent years becoming dependable without demanding recognition for it. She attended difficult family gatherings, accepted unglamorous responsibilities, and rarely treated royal duty as a performance. Philip valued that instinct. To him, duty meant service without applause, and the monarchy, the institution built around the sovereign and the royal family's public responsibilities, survived because certain people continued working when attention disappeared. Sophie understood that lesson, and he noticed. Philip grew more protective of that stability as the years passed. During tense ceremonial periods and private family gatherings, he watched carefully as relationships shifted and expectations hardened. Sophie often stayed close without inserting herself into every argument. She listened. She worked. She remembered details others dismissed. That consistency slowly created trust, and trust became something deeper than rank. Sophie remembered one quiet lunch more clearly than almost anything else. Philip had leaned back and told her that royal life eventually exposed everyone. People revealed whether they wanted responsibility or simply wanted recognition. She had laughed softly at first, but his expression remained serious. He told her that the difference mattered more than titles. She never forgot it. Camilla understood the ring through a completely different wound. She had spent years fighting for legitimacy inside the family, enduring judgment while building a place beside Charles, the Queen Consort, the monarch's wife who supports the sovereign but does not inherit his constitutional authority, carried rank, visibility, and status. Yet Philip's choice seemed to remind her that formal position could never force private acceptance. Charles soon received confirmation through a sealed estate note that his father had deliberately ordered the ring kept closed until a later inventory. That detail unsettled him. Philip had apparently known the eventual recipient might matter. Sophie then learned something even more striking. He had rejected an earlier suggestion that the platinum piece be absorbed into a general family collection. He wanted one person to wear it, preserve it, and remember him through it. Sophie sat alone with Charles after the jewelers had left. Guilt finally broke through her composure. She admitted that accepting the ring now felt painful because of Camilla's reaction. Charles looked at the unopened case for several seconds before answering. If he chose you, refusing it would deny the choice he made. But Philip's decision had not begun with the ring. Years earlier, one confrontation had convinced him that Sophie understood duty in a way others had forgotten. And once Charles learned exactly what happened that night, Camilla's walkout no longer looked like a sudden reaction. It looked like the final echo of something much older. Years before the jewelers opened that velvet case, Philip had already made up his mind about Sophie. The decision came after a tense family gathering, when an argument over royal responsibilities spilled beyond protocol and became painfully personal. Most people moved on from that evening. Philip did not. He watched who defended status, who defended themselves, and who quietly protected the institution without demanding credit. By midnight, one private conversation had changed the way he saw Sophie forever, and planted the seed of the inheritance that later stunned Camilla. Philip had been reducing his public responsibilities, and that made every question of reliability feel more urgent. The family dinner followed a demanding ceremonial rehearsal, meaning a formal practice for a major royal event, where timing, order, and individual duties had to be settled in advance. Several senior family members were already frustrated over schedules and precedents. For him, the deeper issue was simpler. When his strength faded, who would carry responsibility without treating it as a prize? Camilla finally voiced what others had avoided. She questioned why Sophie had been given so much access to Philip's private planning discussions, and suggested the arrangement had become unbalanced. The trusted confidant listened without interrupting, then calmly offered to step away if her involvement was causing division. That answer changed the mood immediately. She was not defending her access. She was willing to surrender it. Philip reacted sharply. He told Camilla that trust did not automatically follow hierarchy, and that Sophie had been included because she repeatedly turned up when something difficult needed doing. He reminded the room that she had never used her closeness to him to demand status, attention, or influence. The Queen Consort fell quiet, but the argument had already left a mark. Sophie found Philip alone later that evening. She admitted that she hated the thought of becoming a source of resentment inside the family. He refused to let her carry that burden. Resentment is not your responsibility, he told her, when it comes from somebody else's expectations. She understood then that he had judged the confrontation very differently from everyone who wanted to forget it. Philip made one more decision before the night ended. According to a fictional documented account from his private secretary, he summoned the aide and requested a handwritten amendment to instructions concerning several personal possessions. An amendment simply meant a formal change added to his existing directions. Among those possessions was the platinum ring. Philip removed the ring, held it in his palm for several seconds, then put it back on. He instructed that it should eventually pass to Sophie because she understood the difference between owning something and being entrusted with it. He also ordered that the decision remain sealed until after his death. Camilla would not learn any of this for years, but when she finally discovered that the dinner she thought had ended that night had helped shape Philip's private verdict, she was no longer willing to remain silent. The ring had become more than jewelry, and she was about to confront Sophie directly. Camilla did not confront Sophie in front of courtiers. She waited until the corridors had emptied, the jewelers had gone, and Charles had been pulled into another meeting. Then she entered a private sitting room, where Sophie was holding the unopened ring case in both hands. There were no aides to soften the words that followed, no ceremony, no witnesses. Only two women standing on opposite sides of a decision made by a man who was no longer there to explain himself. Fear, Camilla told Sophie she wanted clarity, not another argument. But the tension between them had already become personal. The Queen Consort held the higher formal rank, meaning her official place within the royal family carried greater precedence at ceremonies and state occasions. Sophie, however, held something rank could not provide: Philip's private choice. That difference made the ring dangerous. One woman had status. The other had been trusted with memory. Sophie sensed the real question before Camilla asked it. Had she known about the ring before the inventory? She answered immediately. No. Philip had never told her, and she had never expected anything from him. Camilla pressed harder, asking whether she understood how the situation looked. Sophie refused to apologize for a decision neither of them had controlled. Camilla finally admitted what had been beneath her anger from the beginning. Philip had never left her anything that carried the same personal weight. After years of fighting to be accepted inside the family, that absence felt brutal. She asked Sophie whether she understood what it was like to hold rank, stand beside Charles, and still discover that private approval had gone somewhere else. Sophie placed the velvet case on the table between them. Her voice stayed calm, but the words landed hard. I didn't take anything from you. Camilla stared back and answered, You didn't have to. He gave it. For a moment, neither woman moved away from what had finally been said. Sophie then revealed the detail Camilla had not expected. In a private account of their earlier family dinner, she explained that Philip had defended her after Camilla questioned why she was included in his planning discussions. She told the Queen Consort that he had been angered by the idea that trust should follow hierarchy. Camilla realized the confrontation she had once dismissed may have helped shape the inheritance itself. Sophie did not celebrate that realization. She told Camilla that Philip's choice was never meant as punishment. He had chosen the ring because of what he believed she represented, not because he wanted another person wounded. That restraint unsettled Camilla more than accusation would have. Anger would have given her someone to fight. Sophie gave her nothing except the truth. Camilla left before Charles returned. When the king entered, Sophie told him exactly what had been said. He listened without interrupting, then looked toward the closed ring case. The dispute was no longer private emotion alone. Charles now had to decide whether his father's final wish should remain vulnerable to family pressure or receive formal protection. Charles had spent much of his life caught between family feeling and institutional responsibility. Now those forces collided over something small enough to fit inside a velvet box. Camilla wanted reassurance. Sophie wanted no battle at all. Philip had left instructions that appeared impossible to misunderstand. The king therefore faced a choice that was emotionally dangerous precisely because it was so simple. Protect his father's decision exactly as written, or reopen it to preserve peace inside his marriage. Charles called in palace legal advisors and asked one question first. Did Philip's platinum ring remain private property, or had it somehow become part of a ceremonial collection? That distinction mattered. Personal property meant possessions owned by an individual and governed by that person's own wishes, while ceremonial property belonged to a wider royal framework and could be handled differently. The advisors confirmed the answer without hesitation. Philip had owned the ring personally, and his instructions were specific. Charles read the relevant page alone after the meeting ended. His father's handwriting changed everything. This was no longer an administrative file or a dispute between Camilla and Sophie. It was Philip speaking across the years in the clearest way he could. The king set the page down and remained silent, feeling the weight of grief return through a few written lines. Camilla confronted him privately before he could complete the process. She asked whether he intended to endorse Sophie's inheritance formally within the family. Charles answered carefully. He told her that honoring Philip could not depend on whether the person chosen made somebody else uncomfortable. The Queen Consort stiffened at that, but he did not stop there. Charles admitted he understood why the ring hurt her. He knew Camilla had spent years trying to secure acceptance inside a family that had not always welcomed her easily. But sympathy had limits. The king told her that pain was real, while entitlement was something different. Philip's decision could not be rewritten simply because accepting it was difficult. Charles then discovered the sentence that ended any remaining uncertainty. Philip had added a specific instruction, stating that no future monarch or spouse could substitute another recipient for the ring. The wording was unusually firm. He had anticipated resistance. He had protected Sophie's inheritance before anyone could challenge it. Charles made his decision immediately. He ordered the platinum ring formally recorded as Sophie's personal inheritance and instructed palace offices not to classify it as crown property, meaning property held for the monarchy rather than privately owned. No request for its return would be entertained. Camilla watched from across the desk as Charles signed the confirmation. She did not argue. She looked at his signature, closed her handbag, and quietly left. By the next morning, palace staff already knew she had walked out twice. Philip's wish was protected now, but Charles's signature had transformed private hurt into an unmistakable royal decision, and inside the palace, everyone was beginning to choose how they would respond. The palace did not erupt, it became quieter. Staff members lowered their voices. Doors stayed closed longer than usual. Sophie avoided rooms where she might be accused of celebrating, while Camilla withdrew from conversations she would normally have dominated. Charles had settled the ownership of the ring, but he had not settled the feelings surrounding it. Philip's final instruction now sat at the center of a family fault line, exposing old insecurities that no official signature could erase. Sophie received the ring under a signed acknowledgement, a simple document confirming that the item had legally passed from the jeweler's custody into her possession. The transfer itself took only moments, but the meaning landed much harder. Palace aides already knew Camilla had left both the inventory and Charles's office visibly upset, so what should have remained a private inheritance had become an emotional crisis inside the family. Sophie held the case carefully as the senior jeweler placed it in her hands. For several seconds she said nothing. Then the tears came. There was no triumph in them, no sense of victory. Philip was gone, and the platinum ring suddenly made that absence feel permanent in a way paperwork never could. She had received something precious, yet all she wanted in that moment was the man who had chosen her. Edward found Sophie afterward and immediately understood she was struggling. She told him she wished Philip had explained the decision himself, because then perhaps the gift would feel less heavy. Her husband listened before answering quietly that perhaps the ring was the explanation. Sophie looked down at the closed case again. The words comforted her, but they also made the responsibility feel even greater. Camilla reacted differently. She canceled a private family dinner that evening and withdrew from everyone around her. Charles eventually found her alone and asked the question neither of them could avoid. Was she really prepared to let Philip's inheritance damage her relationship with Sophie? The Queen Consort did not answer immediately. Camilla finally admitted that the ring itself was no longer the deepest wound. What hurt was realizing Philip had formed a private judgment about who could be trusted, and he had preserved that judgment beyond his death. To her, the inheritance felt less like jewelry and more like a verdict that could never be challenged directly. Charles refused to let that interpretation harden into resentment. He told Camilla that his father had trusted different people in different ways. Trust was not distributed equally, and trying to overturn Sophie's gift would only confirm the insecurity she feared others already saw. Camilla listened, then surprised him. She no longer asked for the ring to be reconsidered. Instead, she asked Charles to arrange one private meeting with Sophie. No lawyers, no aides, no jewelers, no palace officials. For the first time since Philip's decision surfaced, Camilla was not preparing to challenge it. She was preparing to understand it. Camilla arrived without an aide. Sophie brought no papers, no jeweler's report, and no one to defend her. For nearly a minute, neither woman mentioned Philip. The anger that had filled their earlier confrontation had burned itself down into something more difficult: honesty. Camilla knew the ring would remain Sophie's. Sophie knew winning an inheritance dispute meant nothing if the family around it fractured. So this second conversation began where the first one could not, with neither woman trying to change what had happened. Camilla had deliberately chosen a small sitting room away from formal palace offices. That mattered because there were no institutional witnesses, meaning no lawyers, officials, or staff members shaping the conversation through royal procedure. Here, she and Sophie were not confronting each other as ranks inside the monarchy. They were two women carrying the emotional weight of a decision already settled. The ring legally belonged to Sophie now. Nothing practical remained to fight over. Camilla spoke first. She apologized for walking out and admitted that her reaction had come from something older than Philip's ring. For years, she had felt that acceptance inside the family could disappear without warning. The Queen Consort had gained status, ceremony, and public recognition, yet part of her still feared that private approval could never be secured. Philip's choice had touched that fear directly. Sophie listened, then admitted something of her own. The inheritance had frightened her from the moment the jeweler named her. She knew people could easily interpret Philip's affection as a ranking of everyone around him. The trusted confidant never wanted the platinum ring to become evidence that one person had been loved more than another. To her, that would distort everything the gift meant. Sophie finally opened the case. She did not place the ring on her finger. Instead, she turned the box toward Camilla and allowed her to examine it in silence. That gesture changed the conversation, because nothing was being guarded anymore. Camilla noticed a small inscription inside the band that she had missed during the inventory. Sophie explained through the jeweler's documented notes that the mark was connected to Philip's private family life and his long marriage, not to ceremonial status. The Queen Consort understood then why the ring had never been about public rank. It carried memory. That made the gift more intimate, but somehow less threatening. Sophie told Camilla she intended to wear it only on occasions that would have mattered personally to Philip. She would not display it as proof of victory or turn it into a symbol against anyone else. Camilla looked at her for a long moment. Then she said quietly, "Then keep it for what he meant it to be." It was not warmth. Not yet. But it was acceptance. Their private reconciliation might have ended the family dispute there. Instead, news of the inheritance reached the press. And outside the palace gates, Philip's ring was about to become something neither woman had wanted: a public symbol. By morning, the platinum ring was no longer private. The story moved from palace corridors into breakfast broadcasts, newspaper stands, and crowds gathering outside royal gates. Some saw Philip's choice as a touching acknowledgement of Sophie's quiet loyalty. Others treated Camilla's walkout as evidence of a deeper wound inside the family. What neither woman had wanted became unavoidable. Millions of strangers were now assigning motives, winners and losers, to a decision Philip had made in silence years earlier. The coverage focused on two facts that seemed impossible to separate. Philip had deliberately left the ring to Sophie, and Camilla had walked out after hearing the decision. Palace communications, the officials responsible for handling public statements and media responses, refused to inflame the situation. Their brief message said only that personal inheritances remained private family matters. Instead of calming curiosity, the restraint made the story feel even larger. A major London newspaper pushed the drama onto its front page. Sophie appeared beneath the headline, "Philip's Final Mark of Trust," while a smaller image of Camilla leaving a royal engagement carried a caption questioning the palace walkout. The contrast was brutal. One woman was being presented as quietly rewarded. The other was being cast as wounded and rejected. Outside Buckingham Palace, the public reaction became more personal. A small crowd gathered near the gates, and one woman placed down a handwritten card reading, "Quiet service is still service." The message spread quickly because it turned Philip's decision into something bigger than jewelry. For many, Sophie now represented the idea that loyalty performed without constant attention could still be recognized. Sophie hated what the story was becoming. She had accepted the ring as a private expression of Philip's trust, not as proof that she had defeated anyone. When journalists requested comment about Camilla, the trusted confidant refused. She would not allow Philip's affection to become ammunition in a public contest between two women. Camilla reacted differently than before. She saw the newspaper, flinched at the framing, and remained quiet for several moments. But this time she did not walk away. When Charles asked whether she wanted to avoid the next family appearance, the Queen Consort gave him a firm answer. She would attend. And she would stand beside Sophie if that was where protocol placed her. Palace staff then learned one more detail. Sophie intended to wear the platinum ring at a small memorial event connected to Philip. A memorial event, a gathering held to honor someone who has died, would give the gift its first public meaning. She would wear it not as spectacle, but because Philip had wanted the piece to remain part of family life. That appearance would become the final test. The public had already chosen its headlines, but the monarchy's real verdict would come without words when Sophie finally wore the ring, and Camilla decided whether to stand beside her. Sophie did not wear Philip's ring to prove she had won anything. She wore it because he had asked her to carry something personal forward, And when she entered the memorial gathering with the platinum band visible on her hand, the moment everyone had feared would reopen the conflict instead closed it. Camilla stood nearby. She did not turn away. She did not leave. This time she remained, and that simple decision finally separated Philip's gift from the resentment surrounding it. Sophie understood why the gathering mattered. It was a memorial event, a private ceremony held to honor Philip's service, character, and family legacy, rather than reopen arguments about inheritance. She wanted every conversation to return to him, not to the ring. Charles understood the significance too. His father's wish had been honored exactly, yet the family had avoided allowing one deeply personal gift to become a permanent battle over loyalty and rank. Sophie hesitated just before joining the others. She looked down at the platinum band and felt the weight of everything it had stirred. Camilla noticed. Instead of keeping her distance, the Queen Consort walked toward her and spoke quietly. "He wanted you to have it. You should wear it without apology." Sophie looked at her, surprised by the gentleness behind the words, then thanked her. Sophie knew that sentence had cost Camilla something. The earlier walkout no longer looked like simple hostility. She understood it as the reaction of someone who had spent years fearing that acceptance could disappear, no matter how high her position became. Camilla, in turn, finally accepted that Philip's relationship with Sophie belonged to them alone. Fighting his choice would never have created the approval she had wanted. Charles later spoke privately with Sophie after the gathering. He told her that Philip's gift had exposed something the monarchy often tried to hide: royal hierarchy, meaning the formal order that determines rank and precedence within the family, could decide where someone stood at ceremonies. It could not decide whom another person trusted. The king believed his father had understood that difference completely. Sophie kept the ring because Philip had chosen her. Camilla stopped challenging the decision because she finally understood what it meant. Charles protected his father's final instruction without allowing the inheritance to destroy the relationships around it. The walkout that began the crisis mattered in the end for one reason: Camilla came back. Sophie received the recognition Philip intended, while the Queen Consort accepted a judgment she could not rewrite. The platinum ring never changed who held the crown. It revealed something quieter and more enduring. Within a monarchy built on rank, Philip's final gift showed that trust still had to be earned. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.